Namaste, everybody, and welcome to a new version of Hindu Lounge Conversations Over Coffee. And this is a new format we are trying. This is not Hindu Lounge. And we have a guest today who is going to discuss the book Hinduism in America, How Hindu Dharma is Transforming the West. And with us, we have Jay Bansalji, who, along with Kalyan Vishwanathan, wrote this wonderful book, Hinduism and America, and how Hindu Dharma is transforming the West. So I'm going to bring in Jay Bansalji onto the camera. And today you all will be missing Ajay Shahji because he's not doing well. But I have requested him to drop in because, there is no Hindu lounge coffee conversation, anything else without Ajay Bhai. So hopefully he'll be able to join in. But for now, we will have hopefully a wonderful discussion with Jay Bansalji. And I will just like to quickly introduce Jay Bansalji for those who don't know him. I mean, there are many people who are our listeners who already know him. Dr. Jay Bansal is a scientist, author, and community leader with a keen interest in Indian history and in exploring the contributions of the Hindu civilization to the world. That's a tall ask. He currently serves as the Vice President of Education for World Hindu Council of America, as well as a member of its executive board and the governing council. After a professional career spanning 38 years, Dr. Bansal retired in 2014 as the Chief Scientific Officer of a global petrochemical company. From 2014 to 2018, he served as an advisor to the Argonne National Laboratory in Chicago and the US Department of Energy. He holds a PhD in chemical engineering from the University of Waterloo in Canada and a BSc with distinction from Punjab University. He has published widely and holds over 24 scientific patents. From my side, I need to add, he is one of the most astute observers of geopolitics and contributions of Hindu community in the history of mankind. So that's the part I added. Uh, so I'm going to welcome Jayji. Namaste, Jayji. You are on camera.
Namaste, Utsavji. So kind of you to introduce me that way, and of course, my hardik namaste to all your viewers, and Ajayji namaste as well. I see you just dropped in.
Ajayji dropped in, and that makes this show complete because even though Ajayji has lost his voice, his presence itself will make this very interesting. So, Jayji, I wanted to, you know, introduce the audience to this wonderful book that you have written, uh, Hinduism and America, and how Hindu Dharma is transforming the West. So, this is a topic that is very fascinating because, a lot of people around the world look at CEOs of major companies and many successful Americans who are of Indian origin and Hindu origin, but I don't see an effort that has been made ever to document the history of Hindu Dharma and America and how the two are intertwined. So I'm going to start off by asking some questions, and you know j- just just go from there, and you can give your explanation. I'm going to ask follow-up question,
Sure.
and if there are things that you would like to add that I'm missing out, please feel free to add. And Ajay bhai, you are also most welcome to join in, chime in. I know you will anytime you want. So how did you get inspired to write this? What was it that made you think about the need for writing this book, Jaji?
Okay, so let me start with what I consider the 40,000 foot high view of what this book is about, and then I'll get into the specifics of the question. So first of all, as you pointed out, it's a coffee table book. A lot of text, but a lot of pictures as well, which makes it a little bit easier for people to get into. It's about 200 pages, and it's a joint effort between myself and my co-author Kalyan Vishnath, and of course our two organizations, the World Hindu Council of America, which is I'm part of, and then Kalyan Vishwanathji, who is the president of Hindu University of America. So that's just the high level, what the book is. Now, really, the book is about the history of how Hindu thought actually came to the West in general, but in America in particular. How the ideas came here, how they were received, how they were processed, how they were transmitted. That's a pretty long history, and so part of the book is devoted to that aspect of it, and the other part that goes to the heart of your question, that is you know the the journey of ordinary Hindu Americans like you and I, and of course, all the high performers, CEOs, and the movers and shakers of Hindu American community. So it's really, a history or a chronicle of their journey in the West and in America in particular, and how they achieved what they achieved. So it's all about that. Now, as to how I got inspired, that is an interesting story. So, the first generation immigrants, as Hindu immigrants or immigrants from India in general, uh, in America are about 50, 55, years in here in this country. The Immigration Act of 1965 allowed people with high, technical degrees to be able to come here, and we started coming as students, and then eventually settled here, and integrated ourselves into the society. So, here we are sitting at a half century mark of that journey, and now these, the pioneering Hindu Americans are in their 70s, in early 80s, and they have accomplished tremendous, I mean, their accomplishments are really unparalleled in the history of any immigrant community. Um, so here's a story that needed to be told. It's a generation that has done wonderful work, and they are, at the tail end of their, careers, of course, but lives as well. So their history had to be told. Um, so 2 years ago, I was given the opportunity by my organization to organize a conference in Boston. It was called Threads 2019. November 2019, we held it, and it was a conference where we had 500 delegates from all over the United States and many from Canada as well. But more importantly, we had more than 60 thought leaders and movers and shakers from different aspects of the Hindu American society. There were people from, there were scientists, there were engineers, there were authors, there were artists, there were entrepreneurs. It was quite a galaxy of thought leaders who came here and shared their thoughts, their journeys, and how they got to where they got to. So that was a wonderful story to hear. But these stories are ephemeral, so to speak. Unless you write them down, they really don't have any durability. So we felt that we had to write about what they said. So that's how it got started, and then it took many different twists and turns, as any book does. If anyone who's written a book, I'm sure will tell you that what you started out at the start, it doesn't end up that way. So there is a lot to it, and we can get into it as we go. But that's how I got started.
That's very fascinating, Jayaji. But I have a question about the title of the book. So you say Hinduism in America, how Hindu Dharma is transforming the West. So I understand that today what it is meant by West is America, because pretty much American society's ethos, American culture pervades what is perceived as the West. So I understand that. So when you were writing the book, did at any point did you feel like when we talk about the West, we were going to ever discuss a pre-colonial narrative of the West, because what is described as West today, for most of known recorded human history, was Eurocentric. America is a young kid at the block when it comes to historical narrations.
True.
So, did you ever think, okay, maybe Germany, maybe Western Europe, uh, because historically Hindu Dharma has a lot of connection with the philosophy and the culture of what is mainland Europe,
Correct.
going back to pre-Christian times. So just could you think about,
Yeah.
elaborate about?
Yeah. I think the book is a little bit about both, but it is more America centric, and I'll give you reasons why. I think you know uh, it is true that many of the Hindu ideas that came to America initially, they came through European colonizers. Okay, that you have yeah, William Jones discovering Sanskrit, making some translations into English, a lot of, and then those translations came here, and there were a lot of people who became fascinated by the translated versions of Gita, Vedas, and Upanishads, and so on and so forth. But yes, they traveled to Europe, um, but uh, I think we had a very different kind of relationship uh, with America versus the what we call the West in general, and where we and more, we really think of that as Europe. Uh, Europe, with Europe, we had, I think,
I think I lost JG here a little bit. JG is
yeah.
back. So I lost you a little,
Okay.
JG, but please come back and finish finish the thought.
Yeah. Okay. Sure. Yeah. So I think what I was saying is the relationship that we have with the so-called West, which we think of as more as Western Europe, was that of a colonizer-colonized relationship, and we never had that relationship with America.
Mhm.
Okay. So uh, the history of our relationship with so-called West, Europe, I think that needs to be written. There is a little bit of that here. But the problem is, when that history is written, we have to really talk about the colonizers' mentality and how they treated, our civilizational history. Because you see, they were quite frankly busy falsifying our civilizational history, appropriating, some of the contributions that Hindu civilization had made to the world, so that they could continue to fool us into believing that we were not worthy of anything and continue to rule us. So we did not have that relationship with America. So it was much easier for me to focus on America and write about how our thought processes, transmitted here and how they were received. The history of our relationship with Europe must be written. I think there are plenty of books there already, but I think there is more that can be done to explore that colonizer-colonized relationship. But that was not, explored in any great details here.
Okay. So, the book is very nicely illustrated. There are beautiful graphics in it. There's beautiful pictures of architecture. As an architect, I always gravitate towards visual things, and I love the fact that you have beautiful temple pictures and historical artifact pictures. Uh, so, what's the audience that you are looking at? Who is the reader?
Yeah, good question, Utsavji. My belief is that the book should, because of the way it's put together, it should appeal to audiences of all ages. um, you know, People of my age, people of my generation, first generation immigrants, I think they will find it fascinating because, part of it is dedicated to their own journey, their own history. I think, people like me are used to saying, well, we came here with, $8 in our pocket and nothing else, and look how, we did wonderful things. But, we keep forgetting that we actually brought, our cultural heritage with us, which helped us tremendously in our journey. So, reading about that, I think that generation would be very fascinated by. Then we have the families with yeah, young children. Uh, I think they would be interested in it so that they can learn about not only the accomplishment of their of their ancestors, of their fathers, and so first generation immigrants, but be able to talk to their children about these accomplishments. um, and then I think the youth should be interested to see um, what their pioneering generation did in this country, what their contributions are, because let's face it, most next children of next generation, they know us as parents, grandparents, uncles and aunts, doing our stuff, doing some job. Yeah, I may be an engineer, you may be an architect, but that's the extent to which they know about us. I think if they were to open a book like this, and I'm sure there are other books like in of this genre, but if they open this book and even engage with it for 10-15 minutes, I think they'll find some fascinating item that they did not know before. And I think that is a way for them to, you know, feel good about, their heritage.
That is absolutely true. And JG, to be honest with you, once I glanced through the book, I realized that not just young Hindus in America and Hindus of all age in America uh, should read this book. I would suggest that this book should be recommended to PhD students in Jawaharlal Nehru University as well as in other major institutions in India, especially liberal arts institutions in India, because I can guarantee you that 99% of them will be found wanting to know even 10% of what's in this book. And they might be scholars in humanities in major universities in India, especially humanities, I must underline. So, JJ, I think your book is needed for people in India and the Indian subcontinent as well. Uh, I'll tell you my personal story about how I learned so many of the things that you write about in this book. So when I was a 12th class student, I was, those days, how students are in India, they want to go to quizzes and stuff like that. So I was at a national level quiz competition in Chennai. I am from northern India. I grew up in northern India.
Mm,
So I was there, and for the first time in my life, and this is a 12th grade student who has already studied chemistry and physics for at least 5 years, I
mm,
learned that Damascus steel, the steel that
mm.
historically is famous for being swords of all major kings and rulers and conquerors of the world, was actually not from Damascus, but from metallurgists in India. And I had
Absolutely.
never known that before. So, and trust me, I was considered a good student and a student who was above. I was representing my state in quizzes and stuff like that. So that tells you the level of knowledge about our Hindu traditions, Hindu science, that most average Indians lack. And the fact that you have very succinctly and very beautifully graphically portrayed these things in a quick, fast, readable manner is very impressive. So it's needed for people in India as well, I must say. So I have here Ajay Shah, who every week you see with me. Actually, you see me with him every week. So Ajay ji has been patiently waiting, and this is the longest he has waited on camera without having spoken anything. So Ajay bhai, welcome, join us, and I know
Namaste,
you're
and
watching.
JG. This is Utsoda's opportunity because I'm not going to respond. Uh, but it's a really awesome book, fascinating book, very well written, very well presented. It's just absolutely uh, a need of the hour and presentation that is just just beyond words, beautiful. JJ, maybe I have a couple of questions, but I'd like to see if you can go over some of the visuals that you have of the book, if you have them. Um, if not, I can just ask the questions. Just
Oh,
a
no.
couple of pictures, if you have.
Yeah, actually, we can do that, Ajay, and then maybe you might have some follow-up questions. So, if Utsav, if you want to put the second slide on for me.
So, JG, you have to click on the second slide from your computer, because the slide is, or unless it's Ajay ji who has the slide.
No, no, it is JJ's slide, so I didn't upload.
Perfect.
I just
Now
went with
we
that.
see it. Now we
Oh,
see it,
oh,
JG.
you see it. Okay, all right. All right, wonderful. So, people, when they look at how the subtitle, how Hinduism or Hindu Dharma is transforming the West, I think they're somewhat taken aback. So I thought I would share with you a little bit about how truly Hindu Dharma has been transforming the West and particularly America. So here is an article from Newsweek. I think it's August 15, 2009, by Lisa Miller. So the title of the article is "We Are All Hindus Now," and it's been discussed in the press quite a lot. And she makes the argument based on a lot of objective evidence that Americans are thinking in their spiritual space. They're thinking more like the Hindus than the traditional religions they were born in. So I'll just give you two or three excerpts from that. So it says two-thirds, these are excerpts from the article. It says two-thirds of the Americans believe in multiple paths to spiritual truth. And that includes 37% of the evangelists. Now, that is a quintessential Hindu idea. It is non-exclusive view of the divine that is so close to the Hindu Dharma and is not present in the Abrahamic faiths. So that is a monumental shift in the way America is thinking of spirituality. Now, a third of them believe in life after death. They believe in reincarnation and the law of karma. And in fact, karma is a very, ubiquitous word that is part of now English dictionary and certainly, in American parlance on a daily basis. The increase in popularity of movements like yoga, meditation, even Ayurvedic healthcare, veganism, and meatless products is visible to anyone. Yeah, in some cases they may be small, but yoga is not. Meditation is not. I mean, yoga is a global 85, $86 billion dollar industry. Okay, out of which 18 or 20 billion is used only on yoga attire. So it's by no means a small movement, and that is all rooted very deeply in the Hindu tradition. It is not an American tradition by any stretch of the imagination. Now, did you know that more than a third of Americans cremate their dead? And that's up from 6% in mid 70s. So these are just few of the things. There are many more, but so here we have it very clearly that Hindu thought, whether you believe it or not, but Hindu thought is truly transforming the West. Now, of course, they're not converting to Hindu Dharma, and we don't really, we're not a proselytizing, faith, but it is changing the way people think of divine, people think of life, and so on and so forth. So that's something I just wanted to share. I hope,
Jayji, just wanted to quickly add something to the last point you said.
yeah,
Of all the points that you mentioned, it's very important for our audience to understand that soteriology, or the study of what happens after death, is one of the most important aspects of all global religions. In fact, sometimes it is more important than what you do, theology and epistemology, which you practice during living, because a lot of religions, especially the Judeo-Christian and Islamic religions, are geared towards what happens after death. And in all Judeo-Christian and Islamic faith, what happens after death is really null and void if you lose your physical body, because all their soteriology is based on the idea that your body will be revived in an afterlife after some form of a judgment. So the fact that one third of Americans are actually cremating their bodies, it actually nullifies and goes the most against any belief in Judeo-Christian and Islamic soteriology. That is very important, because often that has driven religion for most of human history. So I just wanted to put that in for the audience to understand.
Yeah. Thanks for clarifying that. I mean, very important point. So let me, the other thing I just wanted to share with you are some quotes from famous people who are, Western people. I purposely made sure that, we actually include quotes from a variety of Western thought leaders in the book. I didn't want to include Hindu thought leaders because, you're always accused of bias and so on and so forth. So here in the book we have 30 different quotes from well-known personalities, and I just want to share a few of them before I get back to Ajayji's question. Let me see if I can move to the next slide here. Uh, can you see it?
Yes,
Can you see it?
absolutely. Yes, we see
Okay.
it, and yeah.
Yeah. So as I said, the book has actually 30 different quotes like this. But here are four uh, from philosophers, writers, historians. So Arthur Schopenhauer, a German philosopher, he says Vedas are the most rewarding and the most elevating book which can be possible in the world. We have the famous American transcendentalist Ralph Waldo Emerson in the early 19th century. He says, in the great books of India, an empire spoke to us, large, serene, consistent, the voice of an old intelligence, which in another age and climate had pondered and thus disposed of the questions that exercise us today. Now we have a British author. You didn't think British actually particularly respected the colonized, but here is Sir John Woodroffe from the I guess mid 19th century to early 20th century. He writes, an examination of Indian Vedic doctrines shows that it is in tune with the most advanced scientific and philosophical thought of the West. And then we have the famous American historian Will Durant. He is pretty much of the 20th century, so not too long ago. And he says this: India was the motherland of a race, and Sanskrit, the mother of Europe's languages. She was the mother of our philosophy, mother through the Arabs of much of our mathematics. So that is one. And let me now share one more slide like that. Um, Here we have four well-known scientists, three of them Nobel laureates, and Robert Oppenheimer does not need any introduction either. He's the father of atomic bomb in this country. So Erwin Schrödinger, he's considered the father of quantum physics, and he is a Nobel laureate in 1933. He says most of my ideas and theories are heavily influenced by Vedanta. Then we have Niels Bohr. He's also a Nobel laureate, 1922. He says, I go to the Upanishads to ask questions. Then we have Heisenberg. Everyone knows about Heisenberg effect. He's a Nobel laureate, 1932. And he says, after the conversations about Indian philosophy, some of the ideas of quantum physics that had seemed so crazy suddenly made more sense. And then, of course, Robert Oppenheimer says, access to the Vedas is the greatest privilege this century may claim over all previous centuries. So, when you look at, where we are today, how Hindu ideas are sometimes, not given respect in the media, and actually there is a lot of what we call Hinduphobia and so on and so forth. um, that is a relatively new phenomenon. There was at some point in time and over a long period of time, a lot of thought leaders who thought very, very highly of the Hindu civilizational contributions. So I'll stop there. I forgot the gist of your questions. If you wouldn't mind repeating it. Uh, uh, I cannot hear you. Sorry.
Ajay bhai, your sound is
Yeah, I was
switched
on
off.
mute. So you can hear me now?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. No, JJ, I did not ask a question yet. My only question was, I do have the book, actually, as you can see, waiting to be displayed, and I didn't know if you wanted to kind of show some highlights from the book. It's here. So if you wanted to point to a particular page, uh, like for example, this is a page of key pillars of Hindu Dharma, and some of the other pages, as we said in the beginning, it's beautifully laid out. It's and uh, right for all age groups. So Jaji, any particular page you want to kind of show people to give the highlights?
Yeah, so if you would go to the page where we talk about reverence for knowledge, I think a lot of people would be fascinated by what's there. Let me see if I can find the page number for you
If you have a
quickly.
page number, I can quickly go there.
I know. It's um,
Well,
yes.
while you're doing that, I just want to give people a flavor of the book. Here are the basic concepts of Hindu Dharma, like reincarnation, moksha, Ishwar, or personal deity, the Hindu family system. And you can see it's very beautiful images about collective decision making, social safety net, transmission of traditional values, intergenerational symbiosis in action. Um, there's some 16 samskars are of the Hindu life and depicted pictorially, every one of them, as you can see here. And you
Actually,
know,
Ajay bhai, I had a question for JG, and because JG wrote the book, he probably has a better answer than most of us would have. So, JG, whenever we look and study the historical commentary on Hindu Dharma
Mhm.
global, uh, we see that there are overwhelming number of people who are of science background, science, medicine, people who tend to be more rational, I must say, uh, that have a very positive opinion and wonderful things to say about Hindu Dharma, not just in the field of science, but as you can see in the in the Vedas and the Bhagavad Gita and the Vedanta. So in the field of philosophy as well, not as much from the field of literature, and
Yeah.
certainly not as much from the field of sociology, anthropology, and geopolitics. So since you worked on this so much and you put so much effort into it, how do you see and how do you explain that?
Yeah, it's actually a very interesting question, Utsavji. And I'm not sure if I have the right answer, but I'll give you what I think is is potentially a reason. Um, if you go to the early parts of let's say the late 18th century, after William Jones discovered Sanskrit, and there was a lot of appreciation for for Indian civilization contributions, even in the what we consider humanities or social sciences. However, it changed tremendously because of certain what I would consider racial complex that I think Europe has harbored for a long period of time. Um, they started particularly in Germany. See, Germany, you may know that in the 19 up to the almost late 19th century was actually not a country. There were a bunch of tribes, warring tribes, and they were looking to find a way to form a nation, and they were looking for a national identity. So they at some point along the way they discovered Mahabharat, and they started associating themselves with the heroes of Mahabharat, particularly Kauravas, and so they appropriated our identity, and this whole business of German Indology came into being, where they basically said, we are the superior race. This history is written about us, and the people, the so-called Aryans who went to India, they got mixed with the local people. So the whole idea of German or Indology, Western Indology in particular, was to put down the Indian civilizational contributions, the entire history. Part of it was because of their racial complexes, but a part of it was also because the need to justify the colonial rule, the British colonial rule. So I think that's how the thinking in the humanities, the Western humanities, got colored tremendously against the Hindu civilization. Um, Whereas the scientists, I think, as you pointed out, they have a slightly more rational perspective. Although even there, a lot of our contributions got appropriated and attributed to Western scientists and so on and so forth. But scientists in general, I think, had a more, shall we say, even-handed view of our contributions. So that would be my explanation. There may be others. I won't consider myself an expert in the field.
So,
Thank,
JJ, I have a slightly different stream of questions, a couple of them, or maybe
Sure.
three. One is that, in if you look at the American history, since the arrival of the Europeans and the way America was established, um, and if you look at the American textbooks that are, in elementary school and middle school and all that, you'll see that, and also, some of the scholarly work, it would say that America was built on Protestant work ethics and puritanical values. And here we are saying that, you know Hindus have made this enormous contribution and all that. How do so assuming that, there is a confluence of both, how do
Hmm.
the Protestant work ethics and puritanical values kind of come together with the Hindu, uh, you know uh, Hindu philosophy, Hindu ethics, Hindu ethos that we bring to America?
Um, yeah, I have to think a little bit about that. Ajay. I think that's a very deep question. You know the thought process of from Hindu philosophy that the Americans have absorbed. They're also, I mean, majority of Americans, as you know, are Protestants. So many of them have actually adopted the Hindu philosophy. Um, but I don't know. I mean, I really can't answer that question offline. I would have to think a little bit more about that.
Okay. Well, that gives us the idea of a next show, I guess, or one of the future shows.
Or
Uh,
maybe next book,
Maybe next week. So JJ, along these same lines, right? I have two more questions, and one of them is that, America generally attributes a lot of its success, especially when it comes to the success in the West. It's a Western part of America, and, to rugged individualism. So, you know, how does rugged individualism and some of the, some of the things that we have seen in your book about collective achievements and people coming together achieving things, how does Hindu ethos and Hindu dharma thrive in a place where
Sure.
rugged individualism is something that propels success? I mean, you look at Steve Jobs. Steve Jobs is successful because, or was rather successful because, in some ways, rugged individualism, or, there's several of the Western states that became part of America, because people endured long, wagon rides, and, uh, came across difficult lands, and, whatever, right? So how does that blend with the Hindu ethos and Hindu way of thinking and Hindu way of doing things? Because Hindus never really went to other countries and other lands and conquered them.
Sure, sure. So, s- so I think that kind of plays to Ekam Sad Vipra Bahura Vadanti concept in a way. There are multiple ways to whatever you consider the ultimate. If you consider success, material success as ultimate, there are probably multiple ways to get there. But then I think so. So rugged individualism was gets you there in a certain way, and then this collective thinking gets you there in a certain way. I would argue that, if you look at the success of Hindu Americans here in the last 50 plus years, uh, I attribute a large part of it to strong family structure. Okay, that is quintessential collective, collective unit, collective thinking, and so on and so forth. So I give collective thinking a great deal of credit. Now, you have to also think of, what does rugged individualism what does that success look like? What does it get you to versus what collective success gets you to? I think one is you know, I believe the individual ruggedism, rugged, individualism, that gets you to, this this madness about success at any cost, in my opinion. Where there is a lot of stress in the society, there are a lot of ills that come with it. Whereas I think the collective thought process gets you there, but gets it's more durable and less stressful and more harmonious. So yeah, and end result, yes, success, but what comes along with it may be very different.
I do have uh, one thought that when I when we, that I want to kind of bounce off of you. And again, this is a casual conversation, so we never look at it as a formal interview. I mean, a formal interview show or any of that, right? This is just casual conversation. So
Sure.
one place where I think that the rugged individualism among Hindus have been beyond imagination successful is in case of the spiritual gurus. So Swami Vivekanand came here to America. He came as an individual
Fair.
and he accomplished amazing things at the Parliament of World Religion. So Prabhupada Swami came here
Yeah.
from nothing. He established ISKCON, and I can think of Swami Chinmayananda coming here, Mata Amritanandamai coming here, Sadguru coming here, Sri Ravi Shankar coming here. These people have propagated the best of Hindu Dharma, uh, and their success is really rugged individualism in that American society afforded them, in terms of allowing them to flourish.
Sure, sure. Actually, Eddie, I think that's a very good point. I did want to bring it up at some point in our conversation. When I look at the personalities that you just talked about, actually it amazes me what they managed to accomplish and what they came here with. I mean, here are people, strange attire, and so many of them did not speak good English, and their ideas certainly were at 180 degrees to the society they were coming to. So how, I mean, they didn't know where they're going to even eat or sleep or whatever have you. So I mean, how these people managed to connect with an alien society, conveyed their ideas, not just conveyed their ideas, but actually converted them to their way of thinking. I mean, that is an accomplishment that I can't even imagine how one gets started on. And yet these people did it, and not one, not two, but you know, dozens, maybe scores of them. And many of them are noted in the book. I just want to change the conversations very slightly. So first of all, if you wouldn't mind showing page 30, 31 of the book, it's about our education system. So yeah, it's I think one after that maybe. Uh, if you could just scroll it a little further. Yeah. So here, yeah, this one here. So there's a lot of people when they look at the Indian education system today, or Hindu education system, if you like, wonder, and how Indian civilization or Hindu civilization could have achieved the things that they claim to have achieved with the kind of education system that we've been exposed to through our school years. But the reality is, here are this fellow Dharampal, who's featured here. He's written a beautiful book called uh, The Beautiful Tree. And the specialty of that book is that he is actually dug into the British records going back to early 19th century and before. And those, I mean, there are reports by the British officials talking about the Indian education system. One of them says there was a school in every village. Here is William Adams, I forget what his role was, but he says there existed 100,000 village schools in Bengal and Bihar around 1930s. Thomas Monroe, I believe, was he was the, I forget, I think he was the president of the Madras presidency at that time. And he says every village had a school. On the next page, if you would scroll, please. So I've listed a bunch of things here that that I pulled together from their reports, and it says contemporary British records show that education for the masses was more advanced and more widespread in India than it was in England at that time in terms of number of schools and colleges relative to the population, number of students attending the institutions, duration of time spent in school, quality of teachers, and let me just read the last one. High percentage of so-called lower class students attending these schools as compared to so-called upper class. So the majority of the students were from what ultimately came to be known as scheduled class. This is, I mean, unheard of. I was shocked when I read this, and this is from the British reports. And I think even Hindu Americans today would be, I mean, surprised to read that. Um, so that's one aspect that I just wanted to bring, and of course there is a lot more about our knowledge system, about the entire Shruti and Samriti and how they're structured and all the subsystems, on the next few pages. I don't want to bore the audience with details here. I think they really need to get the book and at some point. But I just wanted to talk about one more thing. It's not all about Hindus making the contribution or the swamis and gurus, bringing the Hindu thought here. There are a lot of people who are born uh, in and raised here in this country of not Hindu faith, who actually picked up these ideas and transmitted it themselves. So if I could ask you, um, let's see. um, yeah, so let me take you to page 94. Yeah, I'm gonna make you jump around a little bit. Actually, before you do that, maybe 90, one before that. Just give me um, transmission. Um, yeah, so let's go to page 88. Yeah, here we are. So, this and next page actually shows the key influencers in one specific field, and that is spirituality. There are five like that. One on yoga, one on mind sciences, one on healthcare, and so on and so forth. But here we have, of course, Swami Vivekananda is there. He made a great contribution. But we have people like Ralph Waldo Emerson, Walt Whitman, Annie Besant, of course, Schrodinger, I mentioned, Joel Solomon, and so on and so forth. Ernest Holmes. So it's we don't talk about just the Hindus who came here to spread the word of Hindu Dharma. A lot of people here have need to be given credit for transmitting and absorbing that information and actually being part of this great movement. And like I said, there are five pages like that in the book, and of course a lot written about how they made the contribution. On the next page, you can show very quickly on the next page. We won't dwell on it, but you have some famous people here like David Frawley, John Hagelin. Today he's with the Maharishi International University. Jeffrey Long. So there are a lot of people here who adopted the Hindu Dharma or spread the word. Yeah. So yeah, let's see what else we can talk about.
JJ, I have a question that maybe you know, if maybe you have thought about it,
Mhm.
when when someone like you who chronicles the contribution of a particular faith, in this case a Hindu faith in America,
Mhm.
one of the natural questions that people can ask is that, what about, how does it compare or contrast with, say, contributions from other faiths? And here I use the word faiths somewhat loosely, uh, because if someone were to write, for example, a similar book of contribution of Judaism in America, now they have a much longer history here, and the style and the they didn't the starting field was not level, but still, uh, you know contribution of Judaism to America, for example, or contribution of some of the other Abrahamic religions, right?
Mhm.
How do we compare and contrast these contributions?
Right. So, Hindu contribution has been, of course, in many, many fields. It goes way back. Um, BCE, many centuries pre-BCE. I mean, Bodhayan Sutra is, from the 8th century BCE, for example, and contributions in many, many different fields, many of which have been borrowed. Some of them been misattributed to other Western names and so on and so forth. So now the uh, the contributions from other faiths, if you think of the Christian contribution or the Jewish contribution. I mean, the European thought system has been around for a long time as well, but I think they became more prominent in sciences with the industrial revolution in the last 200 years, and there is tremendous contributions there. Unfortunately, we were not at the scene because we were being ruled by others, and we really did not have freedom of in fact they were busy, many of them were busy destroying our systems, so we were not able to participate in the industrial revolution. So our contributions in that arena have been suppressed as a result of that. But of course, when you look at Hindu Americans today making contributions to all those fields, they're second to none.
No, so my question was specifically towards, say, for example, only specific to contributions towards America and making of America. So, for example, how would you contrast? What I meant to ask was, how do you compare and contrast, say, for example, the uh, contribution of people following Judaism, people following Hindu Dharma, people following Protestantism and Catholicism, to the to making America what it is today.
Okay. Well, so I mean, look, Hindus have been here in relatively small numbers and for a relatively small period of time. Okay. Whereas this country was, I mean, there's no two ways about it. This country was made by, yeah, by Europeans. Of course, with a lot of slave labor and so forth. But that's a dark part of the history we don't need to go into. But they've been at it for 300, 400 years. Whereas our contribution is over a relatively small period of time. So if you just want to talk about quantitative contribution, yeah, we cannot compare the two. But if you look at the quality of contribution, if you look at the level at which we're contributing, given our numbers, given our time, I think I would put it next to any. I mean, there's no we have nothing to be embarrassed about at all. Our contributions are at par or way outsized to our numbers.
Yeah, and,
That
and
is
JJ,
absolutely well put. Thank
yeah,
you.
exactly. So JG, that's the part. I think JG, what JG really highlighted is that given the proportion of the population that Hindus have in the American continent, and given the short period of history that Hindu Dharma has been introduced to the American mind, uh, I think that the contribution is unparalleled in that way, and I think that's very well put, JG.
Exactly. Thank you.
Yeah. Um, and so that was actually my last question, Utsada.
Well, the most important part here, JG, how do people get the book? Can you please tell us? Because this is something that everybody should have in their coffee table.
Yeah, so we certainly would like, I think Ved Nandaji is he's a community, well-known community leader. I think if I could read a brief quote from him, I mean, he's written a pretty nice testimonial for the book. But one sentence from him, he says, "This book should adorn every Hindu American's coffee table." I think, obviously, as being part of writing this book, I would, I would certainly agree with that. But the issue is that the publisher, Gauda Prakashan, is in India. The book was actually printed in India. Gauda Prakashan is having some issue with some negotiations with Amazon right now. The book is actually listed on Amazon India, but that's no comfort to anyone who's listening here. So what they have said is, in the meantime, well, first of all, you can order. Let me display the page where the information is available. Can you see it?
Yes.
Okay, so while Garuda Prakashan is negotiating with Amazon or looking for an alternate platform to make the book available in the West, you can order from this email. You can write to avm at vhp-america.org, and you'll be. It's a $50. Which is not unusual for a coffee table book of high quality, but it can be had from from the source, and eventually, and hopefully that eventuality is not too far into the future. It will be available from public sources as well. But in the meantime, please write to this particular email. It's
Thank you so much.
sorry, it's $50, but you should be able to get it.
Thank you, JG, and we have audience appreciation coming in for the wonderful work you did. Vandana Tiwari ji thanked you for your contribution, and so Ajay bhai, do you have any other questions?
No, I wish I just want to tell everyone, please write to AVM at bhp-america.org and order your book. And so that is it. And I do want to say, and now we are going to say this in every show, not that we have not said it before, but Hindu Pack and Hindu Lounge can certainly use your donations. So please go to hindupack.org, click on the donation button on the right hand side of the page, and make your contribution. It could be as little as $5 a month, it could be as large as you want it to be. But please go to our website, contribute to Hindu Lounge. This is a new Hindu Lounge show called Hindu Lounge Conversations with Coffee. And that's about all my voice would allow to say, so that before I start coughing. So
Before we drop off, I just want to mention that the all the proceeds from this book are going to go to what America and Hindu University of America. So the book really belongs to these organizations, and all proceeds will go there. Nothing to the authors. We are not, we've basically written off our rights to these organizations. Just something your viewers might want to know.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, JG. And just before we leave, you can look at our content, what we do at Hindu Pact at the rate Hindu Pact on Twitter. Please follow us. We are very active on every issue, every aspect of what Hindus in America think about, what they face, what they deal with, how we counter it. And just visit our Twitter account, follow us. There is a lot going on, and we will be also talking about this book on our Twitter account. We will give a link to it as it appears in American market. For now, we are going to give the link to the order, the email address for the order. Thank you so much,
so
JG.
one reminder, we are still doing Hindu Lounge number 100, right?
We are going to do Hindu Lounge number 100 in the next, whenever Ajay Bhai is able to speak um, and his voice is back. Not that he doesn't have a voice, but in a more realistic, practical way. Uh, so we'll see you soon, and keep following us, keep supporting us. We are here because of you. So thank you so much, and thank you, Jayaji. Keep at it. This is great. We want more stuff from you. Thank you.
Oh, thank you. My pleasure. Thank you so much.
Namaste.
Namaste.
Namaste.